Well, hello guys. Welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny, and this is Hillbilly Modeling. This is going to be part 3 of our M113 Armored Personnel Carrier by Tamiya in 135th scale. So in the last video, we finished up putting the interior together. So in this video, we're going to start working on all that external stuff. So no better time than the present. Let's go ahead and get to work. All right, so the first thing we're going to do now is we're going to use AK Interactive Streaking Grime. Now this is a enamel-based product, and we're going to use that to dirty up our engine bay here. Now, it's probably important for me to go ahead and mention, especially since I know that there are a lot of new modelers that are getting back into modeling after many years of being away from the hobby. To talk a little bit about why I'm using an enamel base product. Number one, it's easy to blend and to mix, which we'll be blending it after we get us down a good dirty coat here, and little spots here and there that we're going to be moving around later. But that's being put on top of a flat clear coat of acrylic, and the acrylic has sealed in and protected all of our previous effects, especially the panel liner, because the panel liner is also an enamel-based product. So as we're blending our streaking grime with an enamel thinner, we don't want to be moving around our panel liner. So it was important for us to go and take and seal that in with an acrylic, because those two are not compatible. So we don't have to worry about moving that around. And as you can see here, I'm just dabbing and blending and getting us a nice dirty streaked look here inside the engine bay, and that's kind of what I'm going for, so it looks pretty good. Alright, so let's take a quick look at our instructions. So I'm going to skip down to step 11 here, and we're going to look at this front sloped armor plate here that goes on the front of the vehicle. It needs to go on now, I think, so we need to attach our headlights and stuff to it, because a lot of those holes go clean through. As you can see there, the slot for our headlights and blackout drive lamps, they go all the way through, and I just want to go ahead and seal that up, because we need to paint the back side of this plate the same color as the engine bay, which will be the pale gray. And we're going to go ahead and attach everything to this. You want to be careful here with the guard that goes over top of the headlights, because it does slope on the back side a little bit. You can see the legs of the bracket there, and you don't want to put that on backwards. And just make sure that you get everything lined up so that it's not leaning, and we will make sure we get plenty of glue on that. And also we have our release handle here for our fording board, because this vehicle is supposed to be amphibious, and we have kind of a board that goes on the front for amphibious operations. Kind of keeps the water from splashing up over the front of the vehicle and coming up that slope and straight into the crew compartment, which is not exactly what you want. And here we're going to go ahead and attach our spare tracks as well. Now these are the kit supplied spare tracks, and we'll go ahead and glue those into place. Now we're ready to paint the back side of our front plate here, and this is that pale gray, and mixed for the airbrush, of course, and we will spray the back side of that. Now once it's dry, we need to take and clean up any of the areas, the contact areas where we're going to glue this plate in. To me, extra thin is really good at fusing together the polystyrene plastic, but not so good for gluing paint. So I'm also using some alcohol here. So this is rubbing alcohol, and we can clean off any little overspray, and then any area, especially right down on the very front bottom section of the plate there, where we want a really good glue seam to keep and seal that together so we don't have any gaps. Now before we put the plate on and glue it into place, it rests right up against the top plate. So we'll put the roof of the vehicle back on. And as you can see there, it has that little clip that holds it into place. We just want to make sure that that's well seated. And now we can go ahead and install that plate. And we want to check our fit, make sure that we get it in the right position. So we do have just a little bit of movement on that front plate, and I kind of want to get that secured. So I'm just going to use this clamp here just to pull it in ever so slightly. And it doesn't take very much tension. And I'm also going to place the engine deck up on top too to make sure that everything is aligned correctly and that we don't have it up too far over on the right hand side or something like that would cause an issue with our engine deck. So the only thing we're going to glue into place is that front plate. So we're just going to apply glue down nice and low and across the front there. That way we've got it secured into place, and it kind of wants to bow away from the front plate of the hull, so I am holding it in place. Now once it sets up for us, we can go ahead and pull it apart. We'll take the engine deck off, and then of course we can go ahead and pull out our roof of the vehicle, which we intend for it to be removable. And at this point we'll be able to go ahead and glue the plate all the way up to those sections that are removable. So there is an area that needs a little bit of extra holding, and I'm going to use this extra thin, super fast CA glue. But in order to apply it, because it is extremely thin, I'm going to make my own glue looper. So this is just a piece of small copper wire. I make a loop into one end, and then we're just going to fold up the other end of it there to kind of make something for us to hold on to. And well, there we have a homemade glue looper. And we'll just stick that into the super thin or extra thin super glue or CA glue. As you can see there, the loop holds the glue for us. And then we're going to touch it up underneath the plate there where it joins to the dividing section for our engine bay. And that glue will just flow right into that crack. And I'm going to be very careful not to touch my finger because I don't want to be glued to the model. Alright, so let's go look at our instructions again. We're going to go up to section 9. Now I know it kind of looks like we're jumping around, but we need to get our commander's cupola done, and we're going to also work on the bottom side of the engine deck. So we'll just go ahead and knock out the pieces that we need to put on our commander's cupola. First up is going to be our machine gun mount, and we'll put that on and get it glued up. I want to make sure that it's not sagging. And then on the back of the commander's cupola is a hatch support, and that keeps the hatch from going all the way down when it's open and possibly snagging on something that would keep our commander from being able to maybe orient the machine gun in the correct direction, whatever direction he wanted to put it in. So we want to make sure that that is glued into place, and we're going to go ahead and put our machine gun together. And so we're gluing on our ammunition tray here. That's to hold our ammo box for our 50 caliber ammunition, and we're going to want to make sure that that is square and set in place correctly. The slot that it fits in has a little bit of play in it, so we want to make sure that that's not going to sag and look awkward. So I'm just checking it now to make sure that it's in the right position. And then we can go ahead and put our ammo can into place. There we go. Now that looks pretty good. And we'll let that set up. So next we have our hatch for the commander's cupola. So we're just going to check the fit on it to make sure everything's okay. But we're not going to glue that into place. I think it's going to be much easier for us to paint it and detail it without having it glued to the cupola. So we're going to leave that off for now. So in the second part of step 9, we're going to work on the underside here of our engine deck. I almost forgot what it was called. The main thing that we're going to focus on right now is going to be the hinges for the engine access panel here, or door. And those hinges need to be glued into place before we can paint the underside of this. So we're going to go ahead and attach that door. So we start off by inserting these brackets from the underside, and that's the back side of the engine deck, and we're going to hold those into place once we get them in there, and they just go completely through that plate, and the eyelets protrude through the top side. Now we do have to push one side down, and you just pick whichever side you want to kind of give it a little bit of wiggle room there so we can get our hinge inserted into those eyelets, and then we can push them up flush against the back side of the plate. Now once we do that, we can apply a little bit of Tamiya extra thin here to the back side, and that'll glue our hinges into place. And we just want to make sure that it's not canted or slanted one way or the other, and that it's lined up, and that there is no Tamiya extra thin into the hinge joint there. We want to make sure that the door still works for us, because we're supposed to be able to actually open that and display our engine. So step 12 is all about the exterior sections here. Now you probably noticed that I didn't do all the parts on the underside. We'll get to that later because a lot of these items are painted separately. So we're going to go ahead and attach our little accessories here that goes onto the engine deck section. First of all, the lifting hook or eyelet, and then we'll put our horn into place, and want to make sure that everything is setting as close to vertical as possible, and then we'll put our headlights into place. And as you know from the other side that we did earlier, that slot where the headlights go in go all the way through that deck plate, so we want to fill that gap. And then we've got our headlight guard. I almost forgot what it was called. And just make sure that you don't put that on backwards as before. And we also have our shovel. And now you may decide to leave off these tools off the vehicle if it's easier for you to paint it that way. I kind of like to paint them on the vehicle, so it's just easier for me to hold. And it's all a matter of what you prefer to do. So here we're just going to touch a little bit of Tamiya extra thin there, and then just check and make sure that our shovel is straight, right in its correct location. I don't want it slanted. But now one little problem we do have here is that it wants to spring away once we've got it glued into place there, and the end of it needs to be actually down against the front plate. So I'm just going to use some Tamiya extra thin there to kind of soften that handle a little bit, and we'll give it just a few seconds to do its work, and then we can just press it down and add a little bit of glue there on the very end, which is where the end bracket is for the spade, and that'll glue it into place for us. So next we're going to check clearances. I'm kind of worried about this right here. Now this is the radiator shroud that is mounted on the bottom side of our engine deck. I'm just going to run a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin there. I'm not going to over glue it. Of course, it doesn't take much to over glue these. And we're going to go ahead and put the top back on the vehicle because we need to check what kind of clearance we have there. I want to make sure that this is going to fit properly before we decide to build everything up. And now is a good time to really pay attention to this. It just looked to me like it was going to be awful close. So we're going to set the engine deck into place and then check the fit of it. Now, it fit before, but we kind of have a fit issue here because it is no longer wanting to snap down into place. So that radiator shroud is kind of holding us off. Yeah, that's not going to work for us. So we'll go ahead and remove the engine deck and just gently pull it back up out of place here. As you can see here, I'd previously painted that, the flat black primer, and you can see the rub marks there. And so it's too far outboard, which is just not enough clearance. So I'm going to use a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin here to soften up our glue point. And I'm doing this all pretty much instantaneous. Well, not instantaneous, but I just let it set up a few minutes before I check the fit, and that way we could pull it back off. And as you can see, we'll have a little bit of glue to clean up here, but what we need to do is on the front side, I'm just going to try to taper that a little bit and change the angle. And whoops, there it went. But we want to change that angle a little bit, so I'm going to file it or sand it. I'm going to try sanding it first, and we'll see how far we go. So once we scraped all that glue off and we can start sanding it there, we want it to taper towards that sharp edge there. Trying to get it to lean away from the side of the vehicle. And I'm going to go ahead and reattach it. Now I've got a little bit of angle there, as you can see. It's not a lot, but I don't think I need a whole lot. And we'll just touch it with a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin again. Give it a minute or two to set up, and then we'll try the fit once more. It's always a good idea to test fit things, even on a Tamiya kit. And here is one of those examples where in a Tamiya kit, it may not fit exactly like you would expect it to. And it still seems like it is touching too much, and it doesn't allow our engine deck to seat. Now, we already know that that engine deck fits properly because we had it in place when we put the front plate on the hull. So, yeah, it's still up. So we're going to have to pull that back off. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to take the fan assembly and put it into place because I want to know, I really want to know how much room I've got there to move the radiator shroud inboard, because we're going to need to do that just a little bit more in far enough, and I've got plenty of room to actually move that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my file, I'm going to thin out this side right here towards the outboard of our engine deck, and I'm going to thin that out to kind of try to move in that piece, give us more clearance. And I've also decided to go ahead and I'm going to scrape it down on that outboard side, just on the inside there, and thin that out so that I can get plenty of clearance. And we'll go ahead and reattach it one more time. yeah, this has gotten a lot deeper than I thought it was going to, but yeah, that's modeling, guys. You know, that's the way it works. So once it's set up a little bit so that I'm not knocking it off, I can go ahead and check my fit. And there we go. It fits. Alright, I'm happy with that. I'm so glad that that fits. No more pulling it back off and no more... Because you have to glue it into place, because if you don't glue it into place, you can't check the fit. And that's kind of the way these things work sometimes. But, of course, you want to do all this. You don't want to wait a day or two after you've glued it on to check the fit on something like this. So we're in good shape here. All right, so back at step 9, we've attached our radiator shroud, and so we're going to leave that in place. The inside of the engine deck is painted green, but our air cleaner and our fan tower and our radiator is a different color. So we're going to leave those parts off for now. And now we can go ahead to step 10, and we're going to start concentrating on all these little parts that go on the roof of the vehicle. So let's go ahead and put those on. So there's a rear armored vent that goes on to the back of the roof. We'll go ahead and glue that into place. And just make sure that it gets seated down properly. And then we can go ahead and attach these guards. Now, these guards are pretty much, I think they're only on the M113. I think on the A1s and A2s they were eliminated. But on the early versions, these were in place. So we'll go ahead and glue these on. There's 4 different ones. And they glue up nicely. They fit really well. So that's not an issue. And so next up, we can take a look at putting our tools on. Now you may want to leave these off if you like to paint your tools separately from the vehicle. The only thing is that just make sure that you paint your clamps or your straps accordingly. But I like to paint them on the vehicle, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and glue them into place. That way, it's just easier for me. It's just something that I do. But you may decide that it's easier to do differently. And there's nothing wrong with that, because modeling is all about what you like to do and how you find it easier for you to accomplish the same thing. But for me, we're going to glue those on. And we're also going to go ahead and attach the lifting eyes onto the rear corners here of our roof section. And they fit as you would expect. Now, there are some cleanup that you need to do on these parts, of course. I'm not showing all that, but you do need to clean those things up. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the hatch for our driver. And just like for our tank commander, our TC, we're not going to glue this into place because it would be much easier to go ahead and paint it and detail it up before we actually attach it to the vehicle. Alright, so now we're going to go to step 5. Does it seem like we're working backwards? Well, we kind of are as far as the assembly instructions are concerned. But step 5 is all about the rear ramp. So we're going to start working on our rear ramp assembly here. And we're going to attach all these little parts here. And also, we're going to attach it to the vehicle too. So the first thing that we're going to do is attach these towing eyelets that are welded on to the actual ramp on our armored personnel carrier. And the big thing is to make sure that these these parts are 90 degrees from the ramp itself, so we need to make sure that they're straight. And now we can go ahead and put our towing pintle into place. Just want to make sure that we don't put it in upside down. Now it does swivel, so I mean you could actually off-cant it a little bit, you know, to make it more realistic, but I'm just going to put it on straight. We also have our towing cable, and we want to put that on, and there's no issues with that. Of course, all these parts need to be cleaned up a little bit. There is a mold seam line on them, and so I've cleaned those up previously. So I did put a little dot of Tamiya extra thin where the handle goes for the troop access door. And I just want to make sure that I've kind of got it vertical like it's supposed to be in its latch position. And that's what we end up with when we get everything glued on. And it looks pretty good. No real issues here. So the next thing is to check the fit. And I probably should have done this earlier, but there's kind of a small issue here because the ramp doesn't really fit the way it's supposed to. There is a channel that runs around the ramp there, and I think it's keeping it from actually seating the way it's supposed to. Now there are two interior tabs too that are supposed to keep the ramp closed by friction fit, but the ramp just really doesn't want to go in. As you can see here, I'm just having issues with it. So I decided to go ahead and relieve a little bit of plastic here. I'm just sanding this down on the side, and I'll sand both sides of it down. Give me a little bit of extra wiggle room there. Try to get this ramp to fit properly. So now we'll check it again and make sure that everything is going to fit. And it seems to seat correctly. Okay, all right. So we're in good shape there. So now we can go ahead and stick our hinges on. And just simply slide them over the pins there. And we're going to rotate them down into the slots. There are locator tabs around the area where these hinges are attached to the bottom hull. We just want to make sure that everything's going to fit correctly, and we want to keep that rear ramp shut while we go ahead and glue that into place. That way we know that the ramp is square and it's going to close properly. So I'll just go ahead and put a little bit of mask tape here to hold our ramp into place while the glue sets up. And that should do it for us. So I think we're in good shape here. So we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead. We're going back to step 11 here. We haven't attached the true patch onto the roof of the vehicle yet, so we need to go ahead and put that on, make sure everything fits correctly. And so we start with putting on the eyelet style hinge, and do pay attention to your instructions because you can get this backwards, so you don't want to do that. Just make sure that the foot or the tab on it is facing inboard, and then we'll stick our hatch into place. Now we do have a second hinge, and it just kind of loops right over top of the hinge point there of the hatch, and we'll set it into place and then just add a little bit of Tamiya extra thin there, and making sure that we don't get any on the hatch or the hinge point, because we don't want to glue this thing closed, because we'd like to have it working. Alright, so next up is step 6, and here we're going to attach all these items that goes onto the rear of the vehicle, or most of them anyway. We got our bumperettes and our tail lights and those little things, so we'll go ahead and put those in. Now we've already done the interior parts, of course. So we're going to start off with our bumperettes. And I'm just going to put a little bit of Tamiya extra thin there in the locating holes for it. And we'll set our bumperettes into place. And we want to make sure that they're lined up as best we can get them. And then we'll just run a little bit of Tamiya extra thin around the perimeter. Making sure that we don't glue our ramp into place. That's the big thing there. We don't want to do that. And of course the one on the right side goes on the same way. Now these little bumperettes are weldments that are put into place. They're not necessary for the operation of the vehicle, but they're there to keep down dust and also to channel water if you are going amphibious. We can also go ahead and put our taillight assemblies on, and these are keyed, thank goodness, so that we don't get them upside down. And there is a guard that goes above each one of these. And it is possible to get these on and have them canted a little bit. So we want to make sure that we get them as straight as possible and that they line up across the back of the vehicle from left to right side. Just make sure that everything looks good there. And as you can see here, you do have a little bit of wiggle room there from the locating holes. So we just want to make sure that they look good. And it looks good. So next up, we're going to take a look at our fuel cans. So these fuel cans are not, they're not representative of the type of fuel cans that the U.S. Army uses. The ones that they use have 3 handles on the top. And as you can see here, the ones that Tamiya supplied in this kit, and it is an old kit. It is from 1974. So simplicity of molding and casting these parts, I guess, is the reason why they did that. But that can is not what we want it to look like. We want it to look more like the one on the right. And so we're going to modify those. But we're going to do that in our next video because this one's gone kind of long. And I don't want to bore you guys. So we're going to actually make the old cans that came with the kit look like the cans that are actually supposed to be on the vehicle. And you're not going to want to miss that. So that's a little bit of extra scratch building that we're going to do here. But I think it's going to look really good. All right, that will wrap up part 3 of our M113 Armored Personnel Carrier by Tamiya. Special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that keep coming back and keep watching these videos that I keep making them. And I hope you're enjoying these videos, especially this series too. If you're new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, I would ask you to think about subscribing. That is, if I have earned that. And don't forget to hit that like button. Also, you can hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I produce and put out and publish another video. So next video, we're going to be working on everything else that is not done yet and get this thing ready for painting. And you're not going to want to miss that. So thanks a lot, guys. And until next time, you guys stay safe.